If this story touched you, do not forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories to life. I learned that night that silence can be louder than fear. It started with the sound of my own breathing, too fast, too shallow, echoing in my ears as I balanced a silver tray that suddenly felt like it weighed 50 pounds. I was just covering a shift, just another night on the 47th floor of a building I couldn't afford to step into on my own. Crystal glasses, soft jazz, people who wore money like a second skin. I kept my head down. That was the rule. Serve, smile, disappear. Then the elevator chimed. Not loud, not dramatic, just a soft, polite ding that somehow cut through everything. Conversations faded. Laughter died mid-sentence. Even the music seemed to hesitate. I didn't know why at first. I just felt it. The shift in the room. Like pressure dropping before a storm. Someone near the bar whispered a name under their breath, and even though I didn't catch it fully, my chest tightened anyway. I turned before I meant to. The doors slid open, and he stepped out like he had nowhere else to be and all the time in the world to get there.
Tall.
Controlled. Dressed in a way that didn't try to impress, but did anyway. There was something about the way he moved, like every step had already been decided long before he took it. People didn't greet him. They made space. Instinctively. Like their bodies knew what their minds hadn't caught up to yet. I should have looked away. I didn't. I watched as he crossed the marble floor, his gaze scanning the room not with curiosity, but with purpose. Cold. Focused. Final. The tray in my hands trembled, just slightly, enough for the glasses to clink together in a soft, betraying sound. I froze. His eyes hadn't reached me yet, but I felt exposed anyway, like standing under a spotlight no one else could see. A man near the center of the room shifted uncomfortably, his voice cracking as he tried to laugh off something no one else found funny. I didn't understand what was happening, only that I wasn't supposed to be part of it. I took a step back then. Another, trying to disappear into the background where I belonged. But the room had already changed. The air felt heavier, thicker, harder to breathe. And then it happened. He stopped walking. Not gradually, not subtly, just stopped. Like something invisible had caught him mid-step. His head tilted, just slightly, and for the first time since he entered, his focus broke from whatever mission had brought him here. It shifted.
Toward me.
I didn't move. I couldn't. My fingers tightened around the edge of the tray, knuckles pale, pulse hammering so loud I was sure everyone could hear it. His eyes found mine, and the world narrowed to that single moment. There was no anger there. No immediate threat. Just something else. Something deeper. Recognition. Confusion. Something that didn't belong in a room like this. He took one step closer. Then another. The distance between us shrinking in slow, deliberate seconds that stretched too long. I wanted to look away. I didn't. Because some part of me, buried deep and quiet, felt the same impossible pull. Like I was supposed to know him. Like I almost did. His lips parted slightly, as if the words were difficult to form, like they had been waiting for years and still weren't ready. And when he finally spoke, it wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It's you. My breath caught. My mind went blank. Because I had never seen him before in my life. At least, that's what I thought. I should have said something. Asked him what he meant. Told him he was mistaken. But the words would not come. They sat heavy in my chest, trapped somewhere between fear and something I could not name. The room was still watching, even if no one dared to move. I could feel their attention pressing in from every direction, waiting for him to decide what happened next. His gaze did not leave mine. Not once. Like if he blinked, I might disappear. Or worse, turn into someone else. What did you say? I finally managed, my voice quieter than I intended, barely steady enough to carry the words across the space between us. He did not answer right away. Instead, his eyes searched my face with an intensity that made my skin prickle, like he was reading something. Written beneath the surface. A memory. A truth. Something I did not even know I was hiding. He stepped closer, close enough now that I could see the faint line of a scar near his eyebrow, the subtle tension in his jaw, the way his breath slowed like he was forcing control back into his body. "That is not possible," he murmured, more to himself than to me. I swallowed hard. "I think you have the wrong person." The sentence felt fragile the moment it left my lips, like it could break under the weight of his stare. Something shifted in his expression. Not anger, not disappointment. Something sharper, more dangerous. Doubt turning into certainty. Behind him, I heard movement. A chair scraping softly. A man clearing his throat, trying to remind a room that something else had been happening before I became the center of it. I had almost forgotten. Almost. Adrian did not even turn. "Everyone out," he said, his voice calm but absolute. No one argued. No one hesitated. People moved quickly, quietly, as if they had been waiting for permission to escape. Within seconds, the room emptied, leaving behind only the echo of footsteps and the faint scent of expensive cologne hanging in the air. I stood there, still holding the tray, still frozen in place, unsure if I should follow them or stay. He made that decision for me. "You stay." My heart dropped. Not from fear alone. From the certainty that whatever this was, it was not random.
It could not be.
The door closed behind the last person with a soft click that sounded louder than anything else that night. Silence settled again, but it felt different now. He was closer than before. Close enough that I could feel the warmth of his presence, the quiet gravity of someone used to being obeyed. "Tell me your name," he said. Simple.
Direct.
But there was something beneath it. Urgency. I hesitated. Not because I wanted to lie, but because for the first time in my life, my own name felt uncertain. "Claire," I said slowly. "Claire Bennett." He repeated it under his breath, like testing how it sounded, like comparing it to something else. Something older. His eyes flickered, just for a second, and I saw it again. That fracture.
That
Moment where the man in front of me was not fully in control. "No," he said quietly. "That is not the name I remember." A chill ran down my spine. "We have never met," I insisted, but even as I said it, my voice lacked conviction, because something inside me was shifting too. Small.
faint.
Like a door I had forgotten existed was starting to open, just a crack. He noticed.
Of course he did.
He always noticed. His voice softened, but somehow that made it more intense. "Then, why do you look at me like you almost know me?" I did not have an answer. Not one that made sense. Only a feeling. A strange, unsettling familiarity that made my chest tighten and my thoughts blur. "I do not," I whispered. But my eyes betrayed me. They did not leave his. And neither did his. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched until it felt like something might break under it. Then he exhaled slowly, as if making a decision he had not planned to make. "Something was taken from you," he said. "And I think I know who did it." My breath caught again, because I had spent my whole life believing there was nothing missing. And suddenly, I was not so sure anymore. I stared at him, trying to understand how a stranger could sound so certain about something I had never even questioned. "Something was taken from you." The words echoed in my head, too heavy to ignore, too strange to accept. "I do not understand what you are talking about," I said, but my voice felt thinner now, like it was losing ground with every second I stood in front of him. Adrian did not react the way most people would. He did not push.
He did not argue.
He just watched me, quietly, like he had already expected that answer. "You would not," he said after a moment. "Not if they did it right." A chill slid down my spine, slow and deliberate.
They.
Not a mistake. Not confusion. Something intentional. I shook my head, forcing a small, steady breath. There is no they. I grew up in Boston. I went to public school. I have records, family, everything. Even as I said it, the words felt rehearsed. Safe. Like facts I had repeated enough times that I stopped questioning where they came from. Adrian's gaze sharpened slightly, catching that hesitation I could not hide. "Boston," he repeated, almost thoughtfully. "And before that?" I opened my mouth, closed it, tried again. "Before that, I was..." The sentence dissolved. My mind reached for something that should have been there. Something simple. Childhood. Early memories. But instead of clarity, there was static. Blurry edges. Moments without context. I felt my pulse spike. I was adopted, I said quickly, grasping at the nearest truth I had always known. When I was young, I do not remember much before that. That is normal. Adrian took a slow breath, like a piece of a puzzle had just fallen into place. Not satisfaction. Something heavier. No, he said quietly. It is not. My fingers tightened around the tray again, metal biting into my skin as grounding. You are making this into something it is not, I insisted, but now it sounded like I was trying to convince myself more than him. He stepped closer, not threatening, but undeniable, like gravity pulling me in whether I wanted it or not. Tell me what you remember, he said. Not a command. Not quite a request. Something in between. I hesitated, then spoke before I could stop myself. A house, I said slowly. Not the one I grew up in. Smaller. Wooden floors. There was a window near the stairs. The words came out uneven, like they had been buried too long. Adrian did not interrupt. There was music. I continued, my brows tightening as I reached further.
Soft.
Someone used to hum. I cannot remember her face. My chest tightened unexpectedly. I had never said this out loud before.
Never needed to.
And there was smoke. The word hung there, heavier than the rest. My breath hitched. Not like a fireplace. Thicker. I remember running. My grip loosened slightly on the tray as something flickered behind my eyes. Not a full memory. Just a flash. A hallway. Shadows moving too fast. A hand grabbing mine. Small fingers.
Warm.
Do not let go. A voice echoed faintly in my mind, distant but urgent. I froze. The room seemed to tilt for a second. Adrian's expression changed completely. Not cold. Not controlled. Something raw slipped through just for a heartbeat. Recognition.
Pain.
What else? He asked, his voice lower now. Careful, like one wrong word might break whatever this was. I shook my head quickly. That is all. It does not mean anything. It is just fragments. Everyone has fragments. But even as I said it, I knew that was not true. These were not random. They felt connected. Important. Adrian studied me for a long moment, then spoke in a tone that made my stomach drop. You are remembering the night everything changed. My heart stuttered. What night? I asked, barely above a whisper. He held my gaze, unflinching. The night you disappeared. The tray slipped slightly in my hands, the faint sound of glass against metal breaking the silence between us. Because for the first time in my life, I realized something that should have been impossible. I did not know where I came from. And somehow he did. The tray slipped from my hands before I could stop it. The sharp clink of glass against marble echoed through the empty room, too loud, too final, like something had just been broken that could not be put back together. I did not look down. I could not. My eyes were still locked on his, searching for any sign that he might take it back, that this was some kind of mistake. That is not possible, I said, but the words came out weaker this time, like they had already lost the argument before I finished speaking. Adrian did not move to pick up the tray. He did not even glance at it. Nothing in this room mattered to him except me. That realization settled deep, unsettling in a way I could not explain. You said you were adopted, he continued, his voice steady, controlled, but there was something underneath it now. Urgency. Do you know from where? I shook my head slowly.
No.
It was a closed adoption. My parents never talked about it much. The answer had always been enough before. Simple.
Clean.
Now it felt like a gap I had never noticed suddenly opening beneath my feet. Adrian exhaled quietly, like he had expected that too. Of course it was, he murmured. They made sure of that. I flinched slightly. Stop saying they like that. I snapped, more sharply than I intended. You are talking about my life like it was planned by strangers. His gaze did not soften, but something in it shifted again, just slightly. Not pity, not exactly. Understanding, maybe.
Because it was, he said.
The words landed heavier than anything else he had said so far. My chest tightened. No, I said immediately, shaking my head, taking a step back this time. No, you do not get to rewrite my life because you think you recognize me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The distance I had put between us felt small, insignificant. He closed it again with one slow step, not threatening, but certain. Always certain. I am not guessing, he said quietly. I was there. The world seemed to narrow again, just like before. My breath caught halfway in my chest. There where? I asked, but part of me already knew I did not want the answer. His eyes held mine, unrelenting. The night your house filled with smoke, he said. The words hit something inside me like a spark against dry wood. Suddenly, the fragments were not just fragments anymore. They shifted.
Aligned.
The hallway. The shadows. The hand in mine. My knees felt weak for a second. I reached out blindly, steadying myself against the edge of the table behind me. That does not mean anything, I whispered, but my voice was shaking now, betraying everything I was trying to hold together. Adrian's voice dropped lower, softer, but it carried more weight than before. You were not alone that night. My heart slammed against my ribs. I could hear it, feel it, every beat too loud. There was a boy, he continued. You held his hand. You would not let go, even when you were scared. The air left my lungs all at once. The memory came back sharper this time. Not complete, but closer. Small fingers tangled with mine. The feeling of not wanting to be left behind. Of not wanting him to be left behind. Stop, I said quickly, but it was too late. My mind had already started filling in spaces I had never questioned before. Adrian took another step closer, and now he was right in front of me again. Close enough that I could see something break through his control. Not fully. Just enough. You saved him, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I stared at him, my thoughts scrambling, trying to catch up, trying to deny what was forming. What does that have to do with me? I asked, but even I could hear how fragile that question sounded. He did not look away. Not for a second. Everything, he said. A pause. A breath. Then quieter but undeniable. Because I was that boy. The words did not make sense at first. They hovered in the air between us, too heavy, too impossible to land anywhere real. I blinked once, twice, waiting for my mind to catch up, to reject it, to laugh it off as something absurd. But it did not. It stayed. No, I whispered, the sound barely there. That is not, you are not. I could not even finish the sentence because I did not know how to deny something I could not fully remember. Adrian did not rush to fill the silence. He just stood there, watching me like he had waited years for this exact moment and still did not trust it to be real. You used to hold on too tight, he said quietly. Even when you were scared. Even when I told you to let go. My breath caught again. Something inside me twisted, sharp and sudden. My hands curled slightly at my sides, fingers tightening around nothing, but the sensation felt familiar. Too familiar. I do not remember you, I said, but this time it sounded like a confession, not a denial. His jaw tightened, just slightly. Not anger. Something closer to disappointment, but not directed at me. At the years. At whatever had taken them. I know, he said. The softness in his voice made it worse. Because he was not blaming me. He was accepting it. And that made it real in a way I could not push away. I shook my head, stepping back again, needing space, needing distance from him, from this, from everything that was starting to feel too close, too personal. This is crazy, I said, my voice rising just a little. You are telling me I saved you? That we knew each other? That I just forgot? Each word sounded more unstable than the last. Adrian did not react to the tone. He only moved forward again, closing the space I kept trying to create, like distance did not exist for him. You did. Not forget, he said. You were made to. That stopped me. Completely. My thoughts froze mid-motion. What does that even mean? I asked, my voice dropping again, quieter now, because something in me already knew this was not a question I wanted answered. Adrian studied me for a long moment, then reached slowly into the inside pocket of his jacket. My body tensed automatically, a reflex I did not understand. But he did not pull out anything threatening. Just a small object.
Worn.
Simple. He held it carefully, like it mattered more than anything else in the room. "You gave me this," he said, extending his hand slightly, not forcing it on me, just offering it. I hesitated before stepping closer, my eyes drawn to it despite myself. It was a thin piece of fabric, faded from time, tied into a small loop. A ribbon. Light blue, or what used to be light blue. My breath hitched. Something flickered again, stronger this time. Not just a flash. A feeling. Sitting on wooden steps. Sunlight through a window. My small hands fumbling with something soft, tying it clumsily around someone else's wrist. "So you do not get lost," a voice echoed faintly in my mind. My chest tightened painfully. I reached out without thinking, my fingers brushing against the ribbon in his hand. The moment I touched it, the world seemed to tilt again. Not a full memory. Not yet. But closer. So much closer. My voice failed me. Adrian watched every reaction, every shift, like he was afraid to miss even the smallest sign that I was remembering. "You told me it would help me find my way back to you," he said quietly. The words wrapped around my heart in a way that made no sense and yet felt undeniable. My eyes lifted slowly to meet his again, searching, questioning, afraid of what I might find there. "And did it?" I asked, barely above a whisper. For the first time since I had met him, something changed in Adrian's expression completely. Not control. Not power. Something human. Something that had been buried for a long time. "I never stopped looking," he said. The words should have comforted me. They did not. I never stopped looking. They settled somewhere deep in my chest, heavy and unfamiliar, like they belonged to a version of me I had never met. My fingers were still touching the ribbon, still brushing against something that felt older than I understood. I pulled my hand back slowly, like breaking contact might steady me. "It did not. That does not prove anything," I said, but the resistance in my voice was fading, worn down by something I could not fight with logic alone. Adrian did not argue. He rarely did. He just stepped slightly to the side, giving me space this time, as if he sensed I might bolt if he came any closer. "No," he agreed quietly. "It does not prove everything, but it proves enough." I shook my head again, pacing a few steps away, my heels clicking softly against the marble floor. The room felt too small now, even though it was larger than any place I had ever worked in. "You could have found that anywhere," I said, forcing my thoughts into something solid. "A ribbon is not evidence. Memories can be wrong. People can be wrong." Adrian watched me carefully, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then he spoke again, slower this time. "What is the first thing you remember after that night?" The question caught me off guard. I frowned, trying to push past the confusion, past the fragments that kept circling without forming anything complete. "A hospital," I said after a moment. "White walls. Bright lights." I remember waking up and not knowing where I was. The memory felt distant, like watching someone else's life through glass. "There was a woman," I continued, my voice quieter now. "She told me I was safe, that everything would be okay." I swallowed hard. She said my name was Claire. The moment the words left my mouth, something twisted again. Adrian's gaze sharpened instantly. "She told you," he repeated. Not asked. Confirmed. My stomach dropped. "Yes," I said slowly. I thought I had just been too young to remember anything before that." Silence stretched between us again, but this time it felt different. Not empty. Loaded. Adrian ran a hand slowly across his jaw, a rare break in his control. "You did not forget," he said. "They replaced it." The word hit harder than anything else. Replaced. Like my life had been. Edited. Rearranged. Cleaned up into something easier to accept. I shook my head again, but it felt weaker now, like I was arguing out of habit, not belief. "Why would anyone do that?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. Adrian did not answer immediately. He looked at me like he was weighing something, deciding how much to say, how much I was ready to hear. "Because you saw something you were never supposed to see," he said finally. My breath caught. "What?" I whispered. He held my gaze, steady, unflinching. "That night was not just an accident," he continued. "It was planned. Everything after it was controlled." My heart began to race again, faster this time, harder, like it was trying to outrun the truth forming around me. "You're saying my entire life is a lie?" I asked, my voice barely steady. Adrian's expression softened, just slightly, enough to make the words that followed feel even heavier. "No," he said. "I am saying your life is real." A pause.
A breath.
"But it does not belong to the name you were given." The room seemed to tilt again, but this time I did not reach for support. I just stood there, staring at him, feeling something inside me shift in a way I could not undo. "Then what is my name?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. Adrian did not hesitate this time, not even for a second, like he had carried it with him for years, waiting for the moment he could finally give it back. "Your name," he said quietly, "is the one they tried to erase." My name. The question echoed in my head like something fragile, something that should have been simple, but now felt impossibly heavy. I watched him, waiting, even though part of me was already afraid of the answer. Because if he said it, if he gave me something I could not recognize, then everything I thought I knew about myself would start to unravel. Adrian did not look away, not even for a second. "You used to hate when people shortened it," he said quietly. "You would correct them every time." A strange warmth flickered through my chest, unexpected and disorienting. I did not remember that, but something about it felt right. "Just tell me," I whispered.
My
voice sounded smaller than I wanted it to be. He took a slow breath, like he had carried this moment for years and still was not sure how to release it. "Your name is Alara." The sound of it hit me in a way nothing else had. Not like a word, like a memory. My heart skipped, then pounded harder, faster, like it recognized something my mind could not catch yet.
Illyra.
It felt foreign on the surface, but underneath it fit.
Too well.
I shook my head slightly, instinctively resisting. "No," I said, but the denial lacked strength. "That is not my name." Adrian's expression did not change, but his voice softened. "It was," he said, "before they took it from you." I stepped back again, my breath uneven now, my thoughts slipping between what I knew and what I was starting to feel. "You cannot just give me a different name and expect me to believe it," I said, but even as I spoke, the word lingered in my mind. Alara. It echoed in places Claire never had. Adrian did not argue. He simply watched me, waiting. And that waiting was worse than anything else, because it left space for doubt to grow. I pressed my hand lightly against my chest, as if I could steady whatever was happening inside me. "If that is true," I said slowly, "then why do I not remember it?" My voice cracked slightly at the end. Adrian's gaze darkened, not with anger, but with something heavier. "Because they made sure you would not," he said. Silence fell again, but this time it was different. Thicker. Closer. My mind searched desperately for something to hold on to, something solid. Something that still made sense. But the more I reached, the more the edges blurred. Alara. The name repeated again, softer this time, like it was coming from somewhere inside me instead of from him. And then something shifted. Not a full memory. Not even close. Just a feeling. Someone calling out. Not Claire. Not anything I recognized. But something close. Something that sounded like Lara. My breath caught sharply. My eyes widened slightly as I looked at him again. He saw it immediately. Of course he did. "You hear it," he said quietly. Not a question. A confirmation. I swallowed hard. My throat suddenly dry. I do not know what I hear. I admitted, but my voice betrayed me again. Because I did. I just did not understand it yet. Adrian stepped closer, slow, careful, like approaching something fragile. "You are closer than you think," he said. The words should have comforted me. They did not. Because if I was closer, then that meant the truth was not far behind. And I was not sure I was ready for it. I looked down at my hands, at the faint tremble I could not stop, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was standing between two versions of myself. One I had lived, one I had lost, and I did not know which one was real. If I am Alara, I whispered, the name unfamiliar and yet not. Then who was I before that night? Adrian's answer came without hesitation, but it carried something deeper this time. Something that made my chest tighten before he even spoke. Someone they were afraid of. Someone they were afraid of. The words did not sound like they belonged to me. Not the girl who balanced trays and kept her head down. Not the version of me who measured life in shifts and paychecks and quiet routines. I let out a small breath, but it did nothing to steady the storm building inside my chest. "You are wrong," I said, but even I could hear how uncertain it sounded now, like I was holding onto something that was already slipping through my fingers. Adrian did not correct me this time. He just watched, patient, in a way that felt almost dangerous, like he knew time would do the work for him. "Then explain this," he said quietly. His hand lifted slightly, not toward me, but toward the space between us, like he was pointing at something invisible I had not noticed yet. "Why do you react before you think? Why do you notice details other people miss? Why did you not run the moment you realized something was wrong tonight?" I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out, because I had asked myself those questions before. Late at night, in quiet moments I never shared with anyone, the way I could read a room too quickly, the way my instincts always seemed just a step ahead of everyone else. I had called it intuition,
Luck.
survival, but now it felt like something else. Something learned, something trained. "That does not mean anything," I said, but weaker now, like I was trying to convince myself of something I was already questioning. Adrian tilted his head slightly, studying me with that same quiet intensity. "It means you are not who you think you are," he said. My chest tightened again, but this time there was something else mixed in with the fear.
Curiosity.
A pull I could not ignore. "Then who was I?" I asked, my voice barely steady. Adrian did not answer right away. He took a slow step back instead, creating a small distance between us, like he understood that whatever came next needed space to land. "You were not supposed to survive that night," he said finally. The sentence hit harder than I expected. Not because of what it meant, but because of how certain he sounded. Like this was not a guess, not a theory,
A fact.
My breath caught. "But you did," he continued. And that changed everything. I shook my head slightly, trying to push back against the weight of it, but the ground beneath me felt less solid with every second. "You are speaking in riddles," I said, but my voice was quieter now, less defiant. Adrian's gaze softened, just slightly, enough to make the next words feel heavier. "Because the truth was never meant to be simple," he said. Silence followed again, but this time it stretched longer, deeper, like the room itself was waiting for something.
For me.
I looked down at my hands again, at the faint tremble that still had not gone away, and something inside me shifted. Not fully, not completely, but enough. Enough to make me ask the question I had been avoiding since the moment he said my name. "If they erased me," I said slowly, lifting my eyes back to his, "then why did they let me live?" Adrian did not hesitate this time. His answer came immediately, like he had already thought through every version of this moment long before I ever stepped into it. "Because they needed you to forget," he said. My heart skipped. "Forget what?" I asked, the words barely leaving my lips. Adrian held my gaze, steady, unflinching, and for the first time since this began, there was no hesitation in him at all.
"What you saw," he said.
The room seemed to close in again, the air pressing tighter around me. My pulse picked up, faster now, louder, like something inside me was trying to break through. "And what did I see?" I whispered. Adrian took one slow breath, his eyes never leaving mine. "The truth," he said quietly. A pause. Just long enough for the weight of it to settle. Then softer, but far more dangerous. "And the person who made sure it was buried." The truth. The word did not feel like an answer. It felt like a door. One I had been standing in front of my entire life, without realizing it. My breath came slower now, but deeper, like my body was preparing for something my mind still could not catch up to. You keep saying that, I said quietly. The truth. Like it is something I should recognize. Adrian did not move. He did not look away.
You will, he said.
Not if. Not maybe.
Will.
That certainty settled into me in a way that made it impossible to ignore. I shook my head slightly, but the resistance felt different now. Less solid. Less convincing. Then tell me, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. If I saw something so important, why am I still here? Why am I not gone? I hesitated on the last word, not wanting to say it out loud, but the meaning lingered anyway. Adrian's expression shifted again, something darker passing through his eyes before it settled back into control. Because someone made a different choice, he said. My chest tightened.
Who?
I asked immediately. He held my gaze for a long second, like he was measuring the weight of what he was about to say. Me. The word landed heavier than anything else. The room seemed to go quieter, even though it had already been silent. My thoughts stumbled, trying to rearrange everything I thought I understood. You, I repeated, barely above a whisper. Adrian nodded once, slow, deliberate. That night, everything was falling apart, he said. Nothing was supposed to be left behind.
No witnesses.
No loose ends. His voice remained controlled, but there was something under it now. Something older. Something that had never fully left him. But you, he paused just for a second. You would not let go of me. My breath caught again, sharper this time. The memory came back stronger now. Not clear, not complete, but enough to feel it. Small hands gripping tightly. Fear pressing in from every side. And a voice. My voice. We are not leaving each other. The words echoed faintly in my mind, distant but unmistakable. My chest tightened painfully. Adrian watched me carefully. Every reaction reflected in his gaze like he had lived this moment before in his own memory 1,000 times. You kept pulling me forward, he continued. Even when I told you to run. Even when you were shaking. My fingers curled slightly again. That same instinctive motion, like my body remembered what my mind could not fully grasp. So, I made a choice, he said quietly. I made sure you were taken somewhere safe. Somewhere they would not think to look. My heart started racing again, faster, louder, like it was trying to break through something inside me. And then, I asked, my voice barely steady. Adrian's jaw tightened slightly, just enough to show the weight of what came next. Then they erased you, he said. Not just from records. From everything. Your name, your past, your connection to that night. Silence followed, but this time it was overwhelming. My thoughts spun, trying to hold on to something stable, something real, but everything felt like it was shifting beneath me. And you just let that happen? I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. There was no accusation in my tone, just confusion. Adrian did not flinch. He did not look away. I did not have a choice, he said. A pause. A breath. Not then. The words settled between us, heavy and final. I looked at him, really looked this time, past the control, past the power, and for the first time I saw it. The weight he carried. The years he had lived with this. But you came back, I said slowly, piecing it together. You kept looking. Adrian nodded once. Because something did not make sense, he said. They erased you too perfectly, like they were hiding something bigger than just a witness. My pulse spiked again. Bigger? I asked. Adrian took one slow step closer, his voice dropping just enough to make the next words feel like they belonged to something far beyond this room. You were not just someone who saw the truth, he said. My breath caught. You were part of it. The world seemed to tilt again, but this time I did not step back. I just stood there, staring at him, feeling everything shift into something I could no longer deny. What does that mean? I whispered. Adrian's eyes held mine, steady, unyielding, and for the first time since this began, there was no hesitation left in him at all. It means, he said quietly, the person I came here for tonight is the one who took your life from you. Like, subscribe, and share to support more real stories that matter.